anew. Running through green forests in my mind, love is such an easy thing to find. In butterfly wings, a pond's rippling rings, the dandelion springs from the earth. As blossoms unfold, love will never grow old. In my dreams, I dance on beams of sunlight, running through green forests.
Wow. Thank you. An original song at that. Thank you so much.
Beautiful.
And may I remind everybody to mute yourself unless you're reading. Otherwise, we should stay muted.
I wanted to tell Melinda that when she was saying thank you, the rays of sun were coming in her window.
Yes.
And blessing her. Very cool.
Yes, it was perfect. Perfect timing, perfect location. It was wonderful. All right. Now, Margaret is going to have 3 pieces she's reading, but not all at once. So she will be interspersed. And her first one is Underpinnings. Now, everybody mute except Barbara. Except Margaret.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So, okay, do you want me to read the preface and the 2 poems now? Is that what you're saying? Okay, this one is
no, you're going to have 3, Margaret, you're going to have 3 different times to read.
Okay, so which one do you want me to read now?
Well, underpinnings, right? Is that what you wanted to?
Well, the underpinnings, there's a preface to the book Underpinnings.
Right.
The poem Who Speaks for Earth, and then there's a poem Seasonal Underpinnings. So you want me to read the preface now?
Whatever order you want to read.
Okay, the order is the preface first. Okay. So the piece is the book is going to be called Underpinnings: Poetry of Seasons, Creatures, and Plants. So it kind of fits into Melinda's thing. This is the preface. I just finished that this last week, and it's ready to go. This collection is dedicated to the Montclair Presbyterian Church, a progressive congregation in Oakland, California, and my church home since 1969. Poetry expresses what the body, heart, and soul know, year to year, or once in a flash. So most of these poems were written from 2006 to 2015. They reflect an early childhood surrounded by grass, trees, plants, and animals native to rural northern Ohio. In those days, the 1930s through the 1950s, I was immersed in the seasonal rhythms, planting, harvesting, working, and playing, as if the outdoors were an extension of the house. Underlying and amplifying this deep physical and psychic connection with nature were the spiritual understandings of my original Mennonite faith community, which viewed the natural world as a creation of God to be valued and cared for. Many members worked with animals, fields of grain, orchards, gardens, and flowers daily. And so the ways of the earth were early embedded. The other strong influence has been Montclair's emphasis on the spiritual values of creativity, shared experiences, respect for every person, and more recently, active steps to reduce global warming. During the pandemic, Pastor Ben Daniel spoke of the need to appreciate beauty, inspiring my efforts to finish this project. The activities and support of our church writing group and the Storytellers Committee over the years have also been invaluable to my work as writer and poet. The pandemic has beautifully and starkly shown how essential and connected we are to the earth and to each other, and the fragility of the web. Perhaps, as some poems suggest, we will find ways to hear what Earth's creatures, plants, and seasons are waiting to tell us. So that's the preface.
Thank you. Thank you, Margaret. I like that physical and psychic connection to nature. I think that's relevant and important. Thank you. All right, Tom Devley is next with his piece, America and Endangered Species.
Okay. While visiting southern Spain in 2021, a native asked me, what happened to America? The question haunts me. The answer is far more complex than Donald Trump. As I have searched for underlying causes, one starting point for an answer is the poison, as President Joe Biden puts it, of the pervasive belief in white supremacy. On the right, many openly tout the white supremacist lie that a coordinated effort is afoot to displace white Americans with invading immigrants, particularly people of color. White supremacy is far beyond utter hogwash. It is a grave anti-American extremism that is making American democracy an endangered species. Let me explain in a personal context. I'm an American whose colonial ancestors arrived about 1630 and, starting in 1528, a century earlier, as Andalusians in Spanish settlements in Mexico, arriving in California among the very first fundadores, or founding settlers, in 1769. These ancestors, as well as extended family forebearers, took part in the very formation of our early American system of government. I check white in those little boxes on forms. But what are labels when you look below the surface of Americans' lives? For me, white is more a reflection of my bloodlines shifting in the 18th, 19th, and 20th centuries, with intermarriages among Irish, both North and South, and German immigrants with earlier English and Hispanic settlers. However, growing up in California, I did absorb family culture from southern Spain's autonomous Andalusia region. Yes, that culture comes from what we call Spain. However, Andalusia's unique culture, check out the PBS documentary, The Ornament of the World, evolved with the 8th century long multicultural coexistence among Muslims, Jews, and Christians, as well as Europeans and North Africans, among others, under Muslim rule of the Moors. It was from this culture that the vast majority of fundadores in California arrived. In my case, one example is Maria Feliciano Arballo, a sixth great grandmother. The most documented Latina in California's early history. Yes, she is labeled a Latina. But because of the Moors amidst a multicultural population in Andalusia, she also is listed in Mexico's official records as a mulata libre, or a free Black woman. And when it comes to her numerous descendants and in-laws, among them are luminaries who helped shape the culture and political forms of California. One, for instance, was the first alcalde of the Presidio that evolved into San Diego. Another was the first Hispanic governor of the state of California, elected in 1875. A third was Mariano Vallejo, for whom the city is named. Today, he is known as a great statesman with a proud military and political career when California was still part of Mexico, and when California became part of the United States as a delegate to the California Constitutional Convention, then as a state senator among the first class to enter the legislature. Among other things, as a senator, he supported free public education and opposed a bill that would have excluded free Black people from coming to California. The city that houses the historic California state capital, Benicia, is named for his wife, Francisca Benicia Carrillo. Let me close with the Carrillos. The first, Jose Raimundo Carrillo, and my first California ancestor, Juan Ishmerio de Osuna, were soldiers with explorer Gaspar de Portola on the first settlement expedition. And one of Carrillo's descendants brings us up to today. I'm talking about a political cartoonist, vaudevillian, conservationist, and actor, who those in my age cohort may remember from the 1950s television, Leo Carrillo, who portrayed Pancho on the Cisco Kid. Though distantly related through ancestors, I never met him, but recall my great aunt talking about going to school with him as children. And because he was so popular as Pancho among the kiddie set, I was a fan. Carrillo is but one example of a Hispanic American I admire. After college and art school, he became an editorial cartoonist for the San Francisco Examiner. Then, while attending an amateur benefit vaudeville performance, where one of the acts was a no-show, he filled in and was a hit. His acting career followed: stage, film, television. But civic involvement ran in the family. His grandfather was an early Los Angeles judge. His father, a mayor of Santa Monica. Carrillo, fluent in 5 languages, including Japanese and Chinese, served as a California State Park Commissioner for 2 decades. Among scores of public campaigns he led, the one closest to his heart was the purchase by the state of the old plaza in the heart of Los Angeles as a monument to the founding of the city. In short, I am a proud, multinational, multi-ethnic American, and I am sick to death of the right wing bashing immigrants, people of color, and others who, with their descendants, have built and will continue to build America. But that can continue only if we stop the current poisonous white supremacy movement before it drives American democracy to extinction. Remember our national motto, E pluribus unum, one out of many, one.
Thank you, Tom. You had a beautiful conclusion to that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think so many people in America today, if they know or come to know their ancestral record in America, all have stories of people who helped build this country.
Mhm.
That's
Time
right.
to hold them up and honor them.
Yes. Yeah, I think we ought to proclaim that more often, out of many, one. It's all over, like you say, but we don't ever proclaim it.
Right, it's on every $1 bill.
Right, yeah. Thank you, Tom. Okay, on to Earl, who's going to tell us about an interesting day in study hall.
Okay, I've switched this thing over. An interesting day in study hall. I was in 8th grade at Piedmont High School. The junior and senior high school schools were adjoining buildings. Students and faculty moved freely between the buildings for classes. It was late morning and I had a scheduled study hall along with about 50 of my classmates in room I in the junior high school. We were just starting a new semester. Most of our classes had not met yet, and we had not yet been given any homework assignments. We all thought we would spend those 40 minutes twiddling our thumbs. Then a teacher we had never seen before entered and put his things on the desk at the front of the room. The bell rang, and the teacher began by asking us a question. A castle is defended by a 20-foot moat. We have two 10-foot 2x12 planks to cross the moat and attack the castle. I thought the solution had to involve one of the square corners. Several students ventured various guesses involving fastening the boards together. After a few minutes, he showed us the answer. Place one plank across the corner at the farthest point over the moat. Place the second plank with one end on the far side and the other end on the other plank. Then he had a second question. There's a 50-gallon water barrel, and we want to divide the water exactly in half. No, eyeballing was not allowed. Again, various students ventured guesses. I really had no idea what the solution was. Finally, gave us the solution. If you tilt the barrel at an angle so the water barely touches the top rim, after pouring off the excess into another barrel, it would be divided in half. At the end of the period, the teacher gave us his name. He was Mr. Worth, and I would not have him again until I was a senior. I took trigonometry and solid geometry from him, useful subject if I were going to become an architect, then my career objective. In 2002, Mr. Worth came to our 40th class reunion, and I told him my recollections of that day in study hall. He told me he learned about the moat and the barrel from books his parents had when he was a child. Even today, I still remember that day in study hall when what we thought would be a waste of time was instead something very interesting, even if I never had to cross a moat or divide a barrel of water.
Oh, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that a lot.
Now, Kathy's here and we'll switch over to her, okay?
Oh, okay. All right. Kathy is here and she's going to read about endangered species. Hi,
Okay.
Kathy.
Hi. Endangered species. The leatherback sea turtles and snow leopards. The web is, oh, forget it. The web is wonderful. You can find almost everything on it. I found a list of all the known endangered species listed by a category. There are 452 endangered mammals, 233 birds, 218 reptiles, 43 amphibians, 216 fish, 218 clams, 80 snails, 86 insects, 17 arachnids, 30 crustaceans, and 24 corals, over 1,500 total. The 10 most endangered species are vaquita, whatever that is, mountain gorillas, tigers, Asian elephants, orangutans, leatherback sea turtles, and snow leopards. Species have become endangered throughout history, but I wonder if this many happened at one time. The climate crisis is real. Tigers, spiders, kangaroo rats, cats, bats, chinchillas, gorillas, whales, snails, ferrets, parrots, pygmy hogs, frogs, prairie dogs, Brazilian three-toed sloths, moths, gophers, plovers, monkeys, California towhees, clarks, weavers, beavers, shrimps, chimps, to name a few. Think of all the animals that could disappear forever.
Oh, Kathy, what? a
Very
list.
nice.
Oh, wow, I could see this parade of all sorts of animals, all different kinds. Did you say 218 clams? Is that
Yep.
what you said? There's that many different kind of clams?
Yep.
Wow, I didn't know. 218 clams. Wow.
Yeah, have something different than clam chowder, right?
No comment, Earl. Thank you. Thank you for writing on our theme, actually.
Yeah,
That there's no requirement to do that, but it's nice that you did. So thank you, Kathy. I appreciate your contribution. All right, and we will go on to Margaret's second reading, and I'm not sure if I should say it's seasonal underpinnings because I don't know, but Margaret can tell us. Margaret, you have to unmute yourself. Margaret, we can't hear you because you're muted. Margaret, do you know how to unmute yourself? Does she even hear me? Margaret, you need to unmute yourself. We can't hear you. We'll have to call Kevin if you don't know how to unmute yourself, Margaret. We don't hear you.
I just did it.
There you are. Now
Yeah.
you're here. Okay, now you can start.
There's an icon, but it wasn't showing, so there was nothing. Okay. Okay, this is Who Speaks for Earth, which is on the theme. Okay. Who Speaks for Earth, this time, this day, President's Day, when I wrote it, this almost spring day when birds will nest and chirp and birth their species. There is mourning in the air, molten sadness, raucous disarray, with nature's wonders on display, but maybe not as friends. Can we live in peace with the earth's underpinnings and cycles, with wood nymphs and sprites that would show us how to live together? How is it that we can manage and value technical intricacies and robots, but not the ways to protect and nurture living plants, animals, and human beings? Can put serious money on alternate worlds and facts and dispute what we actually see and experience. Are we really giving up on the earth, which we did not create, in favor of cyber worlds, opting for human control rather than interdependence with the creatures and species in our birth home? Does Mother Earth get a voice? No. That's that one.
Margaret, that was beautiful. Opting for human control rather than interdependence. Is that what you said?
Rather than interdependence with the
Yeah.
creatures and species in our birth home.
Yeah,
It's about control, isn't it?
right.
Totally. Yeah.
Opting for human control rather than interdependence.
Right.
Yeah, thank you. Who speaks for Earth? Ooh, I thought that was powerful. It's a question we should think about.
Right.
Right, thank you. All right, then we are on to Cliff. My day in court.
My favorite form of exercise is to bicycle down to Lake Merritt, row on the lake for an hour or so, and then pedal home. On weekends, I start my outing by 6 a.m., so I normally encounter little traffic on the streets. Since a main purpose of this undertaking is to keep my heart rate up, when I'm on my bike, I regard early morning traffic signals as advisory rather than mandatory. No use sitting at red lights when there's no traffic to be seen in any direction. One Saturday in July had dawned with wet, oppressive fog, so I began my outing later than usual, around 10 a.m. My route takes me down Lakeshore Avenue and across the T intersection where Trestle Glen ends at Lakeshore. At this intersection, I cross the top of the T, so I'm not actually crossing a street. As I approached this intersection, the light switched to red. I came to a stop and checked for vehicles approaching from the left on Trestle Glen. With no oncoming traffic or pedestrians to be seen, I rolled slowly across the intersection near the right-hand curve. The morning fog had given way to fine sunny weather, and shoppers in shorts and tank tops were out in force along Lakeshore. Dog walkers and joggers were sipping lattes in front of Pete's coffee shop. It was one of those mornings that justifies the Bay Area's real estate prices. Suddenly, a motorcycle roared directly behind me. Perhaps the local Hells Angels troop was also enjoying the fine weather. The motorcycle pulled alongside. It was an Oakland police officer signaling me to pull over. A crowd quickly gathered on the sidewalk in front of the Arizmendi Bakery, slices of exotic pizza in hand, to watch this spectacle of crime and punishment. "Did you see the signal back there?" the cop asked, more loudly than necessary, in my opinion. "Yes, sir." I wasn't sure how to address this young fellow, since his face was mostly hidden by his aviator shades and bulbous helmet. I couldn't tell if he was taking this seriously or not. Didn't he feel a bit silly pulling over a middle-aged bicyclist? "Why didn't you stop?" he asked accusingly. I wasn't sure whether to debate the issue. Didn't I have a right to remain silent and to insist on having an attorney present? I was in unfamiliar territory, suddenly on the wrong side of the law. Over his shoulder, I saw streams of jaywalkers flowing across the street. Why can't the police focus on serious crime like that instead of harassing semi-law abiding citizens like myself? Before I could figure out how I ought to behave, the officer handed me a citation and remounted his motorcycle. Oh well, I suppose I would pay my $35 fine to the city and go on with life. But when I returned home and studied the citation, I was shocked to see that the offense of running a red light in the city of Oakland carried a fine of $380. It didn't matter whether one was speeding in a car or pedaling slowly on a bicycle. The fine was the same. The citation offered two choices: send in a check for $380 or go to traffic court. In my self-righteous indignation against the gross unfairness of the situation, I vowed to go to traffic court to clear my good name and perhaps save some money. I did my homework in preparation for my court date. I noticed that at Lakeshore's intersection with Foothill Boulevard, a sign identified the straight ahead leg of the T intersection as a right turn. At that intersection, the driver can proceed across the intersection after stopping at the red light, as I had at Trestle Glen. I took photos of this sign and prepared an eloquent statement that would surely sway the judge. I showed up at the Wiley W. Manuel Courthouse on Oakland's lower Washington Street on the appointed morning. The courthouse is co-located with the city jail and the police headquarters. The people milling around the building appeared to be mostly from the grittier strata of Oakland's socioeconomic spectrum. After passing through the metal detectors, I entered the courtroom with my fellow scofflaws. There were about 50 of us. I was one of only 2 white males in the entire group. Based on this demographic sample, it appeared that Blacks and Latinos had about equal difficulty with the vehicle code. Judge Jefferson was a huge African-American who immediately demonstrated that he was of the firm but fair school of judgeship, with the emphasis on firm. His bass voice boomed to the furthest reaches of the large room, where sullen youths slouched with legs draped over the row of seats in front of them. As the first cases were called, the judge showed that he ran a tight ship. One could plead guilty or not guilty, and he didn't want to hear any sad stories. Of the first 20 cases, each defendant began with a heart-rending recitation, usually featuring bad circumstances, bad luck, questionable choices, and unfortunate outcomes. But the judge quickly cut off each of them with penetrating questions that demonstrated that he had heard every conceivable story before. The cases were processed efficiently, the gavel falling firmly at the conclusion of each as the judge pronounced the attendant fine. Although the judge appeared to be unmoved by the excuses offered by the supplicants, I was amazed and sobered by their stories. A particularly ornate one was offered by a young Latina woman speaking through a translator. Why was the vehicle not properly registered and insured? Asked the judge. My fiance left the car when he ran away in the middle of the night, leaving me with his child after he found out that I was pregnant from his friend. So I thought the car was mine, but I couldn't find any documents and my roommate had taken the last money. Then my brother got caught in a drug shootout while he was driving the car and I had to go post bail, but there were problems with his immigration status. So I needed the car, but the police took it and somebody else must have been using it when it got into the big accident. Wow. I could see that my pathetic story about heart rates and bicycles on a sunny day was not going to register very high on the judge's Richter scale of woes. It had also been clarified by the bailiff that there were only two choices in this court: plead guilty and pay the fine, or plead not guilty and be scheduled for a jury trial with the arresting officer in attendance. There was no way I was going to waste another day in court, so I put away my photos, resigned to declaring my guilt. When my case was finally called, the bailiff read the charges and the judge asked, "How do you plead?" "Guilty with an explanation, Your Honor." "Okay, this better be good," he said. At the end of my brief explanation, the judge said, "Ah, but you didn't stop, did you?" "I did stop, Your Honor," I said, "but I didn't stay stopped." A smile crept across the judge's face, his first of the day, but it was promptly suppressed. The gavel descended decisively. Fine is reduced to $115. Pay at the desk. Next case. My day in court was over.
I'm ready to hear more, I guess. I couldn't find me and unmute me. Wonderful story as usual, Cliff.
Beautifully written.
Thank you. I could just visualize that whole story. You just had all these images that I could just, I didn't need the pictures in the book because it was so vivid to me. Thank you. Thank you. I was wondering about your day in court. All right. And now Gail has something to share with us.
I do. I begin to think that everything I write could be called about an endangered species. I feel like there's so much endangered. Yes, anyway, so I'll read two poems. The first is called Good Intentions. Sometimes it is so hard to talk over the noise of the world, consuming silence, consuming the air, consuming the water, consuming dreams, consuming creativity, consuming homes, consuming our voices, consuming our health, consuming the dark of night. We are given to find rest, but the fake light eats away the beautiful night, and the intelligence of the stars can no longer be read, nor can birds navigate. Sometimes the sound of the stadium makes it impossible to hope, or the misery at the ravaged forest, or the murder of innocent people just praying, walking, eating supper, listening to music, driving a car, asking for help, just asking for a place to live, asking for something to eat, asking for justice, become targets of hate. Sometimes our good intentions go only so far. We can't seem to get it as we huddle with the polar bear, the butterfly, the poison fish, as we witness the children immolated. The tiny hearts burst into flames in their chests. Carnage piling up around us from food deserts, sabotage of our rights, and racial terrorism. Guns locked and loaded, ready for the next scapegoat. The shard of earth we cling to is going down. The slice of life we call our own is crumbling. We cry out, but have you noticed that no one seems to hear you?
That's beautiful, Gail.
Oh God, it's so awful. It's hard to make something beautiful out of awfulness. Anyway, this is a different approach to this endangered thing. A blessing. You are, and you, and you, and me, and the enormous beyond belief universe, which I have just learned is inside me and you, and inside even the zippy tiny lizard on its determined hunt for something to eat, and for love, surely for love, like me and you, and the roses in Royal's garden. And inside the gardener also a universe, everyone and everything that is. Take a moment for the miracle to sink in. Even the horse galloping with the speed of exuberant light across the field, the tall grasses, delicate, enduring homes for the creatures who live within this sanctuary that is made with our breathing and from the light we are and where we return. The world desperate to keep living is a blessing, neither yours nor mine, but ours. This one precious miracle, a blessing.
Could they be flip sides of the same coin? The blessing and what was the name of your first poem?
Good intentions.
Good intentions. Sometimes good intentions only go so far.
I know. And I was trying to not just talk about the usual misery, but you know, the misery is, as we've been hearing from, I just forgot the name of the writer. Oh, that wonderful passage of ancestry. A first speaker. Forgot his name.
Tom?
Tom. My
Tom
bad,
Dickey.
Tom. Yeah,
Tom
that was
Dickey, yeah.
pretty. That's
Yeah.
pretty amazing and so important that that kind of writing keeps happening. We need to
Yeah,
hear from people that are you know, being challenged in this way for their lives, endangered people. But thank you.
yeah, I think it's so important to speak your truth. And you did that so powerfully and so beautifully. Thank you, Gail. Yes. And now Lynn Gentry will read her writing, One of the Boys. Has Lynn disappeared? Yes. Well, that's unfortunate. How about if Margaret goes and if Lynn returns, then she can read. How about that? So Margaret, you want to read your third piece? You'll have to unmute yourself once again, Margaret, because we can't hear you.
Now you can hear me, right?
Now
Yeah.
we can hear you.
Got it. Okay. This is another one in the early on in the poem, the book called Seasonal Underpinnings. We are gifted with nature's persistence, so beautifully and definitively modeled by the seasons, coming and going like waves, never the same, always the same. True, summer may be cool and autumn hot, rains and winds bombarding or withholding unexpectedly, capricious as a grinning snowman. The ground is restless and glaciers are not forever. Still, leaves do not lie, nor do bird songs fill the air the wrong time of year. Buds and waking flowers announce what we have known since birth. And as shadows lengthen, bare trees set the mood for a season we do not wish to prevent. There is a God or not, but our seasons frame a universe we have gotten used to, didn't create, can't fully explain. We could perhaps alter or destroy this earth, our home, and what would we count on then?
So everything you've read is from the same book,
Yeah,
and the book is called Underpinnings.
underpinnings, and it's the poetry of seasons, creatures, and plants. They're a collection of, and those are some of the first two poems in it, right?
Seasons, Preachers, and Plants.
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like an interesting collection.
Yeah, we got birds and octopus and all kinds of things, right? But I wrote things over these few years, different things in different times, and I put them together in a collection.
Uh-huh. Yeah, I liked the line. I didn't quite get the whole thing right, I think. But there is a God or not. There is a God or not, but our seasons frame our world.
Seasons frame a universe
Our
we
seasons-
have gotten, frame a universe we have gotten used to, didn't create, can't fully explain.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, they frame our universe, which we have gotten, but we can't explain or duplicate or replicate.
There's a certain mystery, but we're definitely, it's underpinnings. It's what we rest on, we have to either interact with this universe or we're not going to be here. The universe might, but we might not, it's just so obvious.
Yeah, and I liked how Kathy just listed all these various creatures or underpinnings or the interdependence that we
Right.
knowingly or unknowingly depend upon. Yeah, thank you, Margaret. Is Lynn back with us yet?
No,
Lynn has disappeared?
he disappeared, something
Oh,
happened.
I'm here. I'm here.
There you are.
Oh, you are here.
The veterinarian called and my phone was shut off so it wouldn't interfere with the Zoom, but my watch rang and then I couldn't figure out how to answer my watch. And the doctor tried twice to call me, so I figured I'd better leave the meeting and call the doctor.
Oh.
Glad I could get back.
I'm glad you're back in time to read one of the boys. I didn't want them to miss it.
Oh, it's my turn even.
Yes.
La, 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 la. Okay. Given what other people have said, my endangered species is white male supremacy. This was written 30 years ago in a newsletter whose readership was women firefighters. So it's pretty specific in its intention, but here we go. It's called One of the Boys. When I was hired as a firefighter in 1980, it was a culmination of trying to be one of the boys. After non-traditional jobs like toll collector and gardener, getting hired as a firefighter seemed the pinnacle of diving into uncharted waters. I was fearful about surviving in the fire academy as the first woman in a large department and convinced that the men would love for me to just go away. I wanted my presence to cause as few ripples as possible. I heard concern about women entering the department and ruining all their fun. Would they have to clean up their language? Would the practical jokes have to stop? Mostly, I wanted no one to feel the need to change just because I was aboard. I wanted my entry to feel like nothing need change. As a tomboy with only male siblings and playmates, a body repartee and a definite swagger, I figured assimilation should be no problem. And the men seemed at ease to speak freely and comfortably around me. I was flattered, thinking I was getting a bird's eye view of the mysterious male bonding process. But alas, what I mistook for acceptance was actually more akin to invisibility. I didn't want them to fear my presence or the threat a more easily offended person could pose. I convinced them I did not take complaints of sexual harassment seriously. That was for the lightweights with thin skin. They had nothing to fear from me. I even joined them in scoffing at the next woman hired who did find it necessary to file a grievance regarding being called names within her earshot. I felt so included. I wanted to be part of the gang. Another function of this behavior served as it does for the men, to mask my vulnerabilities. Fears about being capable in life and death situations or covering up the sadness and grief which surface as a result of some of what we see. Basically, the game of no one seeing me have feelings. Everything was masked in humor or sarcasm. Everything came down to one big joke. I want to be very clear that for years on the job, this behavior worked for me. The crew and I laughed and joked together. Sharing a bathroom never seemed awkward. The men seemed able to be themselves in spite of living with me. The part it took me so long to realize was that by behaving as the group did, I was the one who was not free to be myself. I had created, pardon me, oh, this paper. I had created, wait a minute, I lost somebody. Okay, sorry about that. I had created a persona for their benefit that left me very little room to like myself. I had compromised my integrity with attempts to be accepted. If the men were slinging racist or sexist epithets, I wanted to be part of the game. If they soothed themselves by trashing the other women on the job, they had my full cooperation. I can't begin to recount the deep injury to my self-esteem that came with this kind of thinking and behavior. The upshot was also a serious compromise of my sense of femaleness. I had the painful experience of seeing other women who came on the job later being treated differently than I. The men were polite around them. Crew members took care to give them privacy in the bathroom. It was difficult to realize that I really did wish they would act differently with me, and I had worked hard to create the opposite impression. I had given birth to some sort of monster. To keep them at an emotionally safe distance, I had practiced being better at their game than they. I could be cruder, louder, more lascivious. And when I realized this behavior was eating me up alive, I felt powerless to change it. I couldn't find the resources to say, hey, even though I know we used to joke like that, I really don't like it anymore. In fact, I find it rather offensive. I just couldn't find my way to do that. Sorry. What I did know how to do was to withdraw. My time at meals became shorter. I would jump up to do the dishes every night just to get away from them. In the mornings, I would do the minimum required of me as engineer and then retire to the dorm to write letters or take care of personal business. I just couldn't hang out with the crew anymore. I couldn't stand who I was when I was with them. And when I sought support outside the workplace, I felt overwhelmed with shame for my complicity in their sexism and racism. I felt ashamed to tell my friends who I had become while playing the firefighter. It's important to keep in mind that this was over 40 years ago, when women in the firehouse was a new phenomenon for all. Today, there seems a more genuine assimilation of women from academy to firehouse. The men are more able to view women as individuals and thereby create individual relationships with them. I think the compelling question for new women firefighters today is, do we want to be assimilated? Or is it preferable to strive for better acknowledgement of who we are rather than who who they are able to have us be? Should we work to have the gifts of our uniqueness appreciated, or hope they will someday value the special talents we bring to the job precisely because we are women? I think there's a last page. I must have skipped something, guys. I think that's it.
Yeah, I think you ended with those questions.
Yeah, I think that was a little anticlimactic with
Yeah.
my confusion.
Well, I think it's a powerful ending, those questions hanging in the air, and I think it applies more broadly, not just to women firefighters, but, you know, do we want to assimilate? Do we want to be appreciated for who we are? You
Yeah.
know, I think it's kind of the questions we're wrestling with now in our society.
Yeah.
With all our various groups. I wonder if you all you listeners realize that Lynn was the first female firefighter in Oakland.
Oh, everybody knows that.
I don't know if they know that. I'm just letting them know. And so you were a real pioneer, breaking through this culture. And I thought it was very interesting how you figured out to do that by belonging and being one of the guys. And
Except
then
what
and
it
then the
cost me.
self-awareness, the process of self-awareness, that you were losing yourself in that. I thought that was interesting.
When I wrote this, it was really the first time I took any responsibility for my stress disability. Instead of saying, you know, it was them, it was them, it was them, I realized I had made the bed I was sleeping in and could no longer sleep in. You know, I was an integral part of creating the environment that I retired on a stress disability.
After how many years?
9.
Wow. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that deeply personal story.
You're
Thank you.
welcome. Everybody disappeared. I don't see everybody.
Well, I don't know if that's true, but we're done with our readers now, and Melinda is going to do her other bookend and close us with a song.
Thank you, Jean. Thank you, Lynn. I appreciate that piece fitting into endangered species. I think it really worked well. This second song I'm sharing was one I wrote in 1991. I was immersed in becoming a minister of the Healing Light Center Church, and we were celebrating all of the cross-quarter holidays of the Celtic calendar, in addition to winter solstice, summer solstice, spring equinox rather, and vernal equinox. And this one was around the time of spring happening, around March 21st. It's called Belly Full of Life. So again, let your eyes drift close and imagine for you your favorite first sign of the earth waking up for spring. Now I know in California that's hard, but if you can imagine things poking out from the snow. Belly full of life. Belly full of life, the air has lost its chill. Branches burst and bloom, fuzzy green pokes out on each hill. All life springs from the earth. The greening stirs us tenderly, calling us to blossom too with this belly full of life. Swallows dart and trill, morning dove coos her reply. Rivers swell and flow, mirrored bits of sun and sky. All life springs from the earth, the greening stirs us tenderly, calling us to blossom too with this belly full of life. We can never know how a life will find its way through the flux and flow that takes and gives life every day. Will it be a song or a story told by the fire? Clay on potter's wheel, or sweet baby of love's desire? All life springs from the earth, the greening stirs us tenderly, calling us to blossom too with this belly full of life. Bridie brings the springtime and this belly full of life. Ooh. Thank you.
Oh, bravo, bravo. What beautiful songs.
Thank
Beautiful
you.
songs. Thank you. And what a lovely program tonight. Thank you for participating. Thank you for coming to listen, and thank you for sharing your writings. And I just thoroughly enjoyed it, as usual. You never know what you will get. And it's always good. So
You're the
thank you.
best
Thank you for
hostess with the
moderating.
mostest.
I just want to say I'm sorry I was late. I actually went to the church. I don't know why I thought it was in person.
Oh, you went to the church.
Yeah, but it was
I can't wait till it's in person and we can
I
go to
know.
the church.
And
Oh,
hi,
my
Margaret. I
goodness.
haven't seen you in
Hi,
years.
Susan. Nice to
Miss
see
you.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, long time.
I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Susan, I think Eloise recorded it, so if you wanted to see it, you could.
Yeah, but she makes me pay her for that.
Thank you, Eloise.
Thank
Yes,
you.
thank you, Eloise, and thank Jean too.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Jean.
The link should be in the next contact, so watch
Okay.
out for it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Eloise.
Thank
Beautifully
you.
moderated.
Thanks, everybody, for a
Thank
great
you.
And thanks,
Very,
Pun,
very
for joining
enjoyable.
us.
Yes, thank you, Pun.
I thought you were going to read something.
Huh?
I thought Pun was going to read something.
He came to listen.
Lovely.
Yes. Thank
Maybe
you.
next time.
Thanks, everybody. Great
Hey.
program.
Yes.
Thank you, Jean and
Wonderful.
everybody. Nice
Good
job.
to see you.
Look
Yay.
forward to the next one.
Warriors.
I don't think we have a date for the next one yet, do we?
Maybe
We have
July.
Is it going to be in July?
I thought, maybe.
Maybe. We'll let you know. We'll let everybody know.
Yeah, it'll be in the contact. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Keep writing.
I got to go watch the ball game.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks, Jean.
Good night.
Good night, everybody. On to the Warriors now.
Yes.
Okay,
Make it prevail.
we'll set a date. We'll find a date for the next one at our meeting on the 6th.
All right. Thank you all.
Yeah.
One and all. Thank you. And good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Oh, now I stopped recording. Okay. Stop recording.